Hello, everyone. It's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I've tried to do this video once, and I think I went through the whole video and realized it didn't upload. I was trying to use my phone. I hate that shit. So I'm at the left forum, and the left forum went well. It's actually pretty awesome. You have all these lefties. They have your similar political leanings, going everywhere from the Venus Project, where you're talking about a resource-based economy, up to maybe some like the Greens, where you have these spectrums. But that spectrum is firmly on the left, so that's fucking awesome. I sat in on many meetings with the Greens today, or at the very least having conversations with people who are in the Greens and meetings and panels. The last panel I sat in, I would never get the hour back. I've lost that hour. That hour is gone to me. It's away from me now. I could have been in the park playing chess. I could have been doing other things, but I sat in a meeting that I find to be utterly ridiculous. I think I even dozed off in that meeting. Now, the panel discussion had to do with what I thought was revolutionary change in the Greens, meaning how can we get the Green Party to be something that's just fucking awesome as opposed to what it is now. The panelists, one after the other, gets up and makes an impassioned case that the Green Party members should be paying dues. And I'm sitting there like, is this the conversation we're here for? Like, is this going to be an hour and 40 minutes of people telling me that the Green Party should pay dues? Are you shitting me? Lefties, you have certain structural issues associated with being lefties. Now, you're bit this way. It's just how you are. But you need to acknowledge those things. So a Green Party, if you're going to be a Green Party member, your first thought is, let me put it this way. You're saying we're not going to accept corporate cash. That's good. Corporate cash adversely affects the person. It bends them to a particular way that goes against the constituency. Gold star. Now, the logical follow-up is, if you're not going to accept corporate donations, you're in a capitalistic society. The elections that are run cost money. How are you going to get the money to run those elections? How? Where is it going to come from? If it's not going to come from donations, from your particular group, where is it going to come from? The point I'm making to you is, yes, you have to take dues. Why are we having this conversation? Why are we having this conversation? Why am I spending an hour and 40 minutes into a group that's having a conversation about the Green Party paying dues? If it's not dues, where are you getting it from? Where are you getting it from? Are you legitimate or are you serious or not? That's the question that you need to answer. If that answer has something to do with, yes, we're serious, and yes, you're going to be accepting dues from your people. You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. You can't go with this idea of a volunteer model. That model doesn't work. The moment that somebody gets tired of it, they just stop. There's no skin in the game. It's not a situation where you're paying people to do a particular thing. Those people are just there because they believe in your cause. But that belief is fickle and would always fall for anything else that those people have in their lives. You have to pay people if you're going to be a legitimate party. And not just pay people. Anything that you want to do for the most part is going to require a certain base. That costs cash. Now, the left doesn't like that. We're squeamish about it. Ugh, it's so seedy. I don't like it. I don't like it. I get it. I perfectly understand it. Get over it. Get over it. You don't have a choice. Are you a serious party or not? Are you going to get into this arena or not? That's what it boils down to. So yes, you're going to accept dues. Now, beyond accepting dues, you guys are in the dark on some stuff. You guys are in the dark. I call this tough love. I call this real tough love. I had conversations with certain Greens, and I thought to myself, these people are missing the point. These people are grossly missing the point. Your issue, Greens, and it's an issue you guys don't like to talk about, even though you allude to it put it this way, you have certain tales about yourself when you're having the conversation that gets across that you understand it's an issue, but you don't want to acknowledge it's an issue because you feel a certain way about it being an issue. Legitimacy. Legitimacy. That's the conversation you need to have. In fact, it's two conversations. But let's touch on this one for a moment. David Cobb, I think his name, he has a video where he's talking about the 4 pillars. In the beginning of the video, he's talking about how the Greens are all across this international and everything else. And he emphasizes strongly, we're a real party. We're a real party. He says something to that effect, but he's emphasizes it. The emphasis is so much further than the emphasis on anything else in that video. So it's look, when I made the comment about H.A. Goodman, the reason I made the comment is because it's a tell. It's a tell. It's a personality tell. If we're playing chess and I'm talking shit to you, I'm trying to unravel you in a sense. It's like Green Lantern loses power ring. I know this guy has skill. This guy perfectly knows that I particularly have skill in what I'm doing. If I need to continuously affirm that, well, it's like, do you actually know it or do you know it? How many times did the Democratic Party mention their legitimacy? How many times do they have to affirm that we're a real party? It never comes up. How often during the day do you talk about air? It doesn't come up unless it comes up for some particular reason. I'm making this point. The things that are, meaning things that are, and things that people understand, full well understand and agree on that are, doesn't need affirmation. It doesn't need affirmation. Now, if you're giving me that affirmation, it means from the perspective of the individual, that individual believes that other people outside of himself have a particular perspective. In his head, he has a conception of the world. All of us do. All of us have a conception of how other people see us. It's not just us functioning in the world, saying and doing all these things. We also have this thing in our head of, how do people regard the thing that I'm particularly doing? Do they like it? Do they dislike it? Do they perceive me a particular way? Is my hair done a particular way? Do they think my pants are too tight? Do they think my shirt is too tight? Do they think my pants are too baggy? Everybody has this thing in their heads to varying degrees. Some people have it to a far degree. Some people have a lesser. Some people don't care. Some people get over the hurdle of caring. All those things. But if you're telling me something and you're strongly affirming it over and over again, then my first thought is this person doesn't necessarily fully believe it, or this person at the very least is sensitive about this. If I'm playing chess and I hear you say something like that, I am targeting that shit. I'm making this point to Greens and to some degree Goodman. Don't do that. Don't do that. We're in the same sandbox. Whether I agree with you or not, I acknowledge that we're in the same sandbox. Because we're in the same sandbox, I have a certain, I guess I have this thing of, it's like this, I have no entanglements as I'm doing this, but I do have this acknowledgement of, yes, this particular person is somewhat of a soldier on my particular side. And because of that, I have this thing of, I want him to be a strong soldier and not deal with the shit that people are throwing at him. Don't put up with that shit. Don't give them any level of joy in the fact that you may be slightly sensitive about it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't show it. I don't give a shit how you feel about it. Don't show it. When you come in your show, I'm H.A. Goodman. I'm a journalist, column and author. Stick with that. Just go into your thing. You don't have to keep affirming it. That's all I'm saying. I'm making this same point for the Greens. If you have to affirm it, then you're sensitive about it. And the problem is you're sensitive about something that everybody knows you're sensitive about, because everybody knows that that argument is somewhat true. Legitimacy is a real issue. Stop skating it. Stop skirting it. Stop pretending this shit don't exist. It's a real and actual issue. Now, I was talking to this Muslim cat, and as we were having the conversation, he's saying, I'm trying to get Greens. One of the panels asked a question about African Americans, Hispanics, other groups, and this whole paying dues thing. And they were like, well, some of these people don't have money to do it. Now, Dixon made this point of, no, those two things are unrelated. Even if somebody is broke, they can move money around and give $10 a month. I agree with him. Now, as I talked to the Muslim cat who was with this particular woman, he says, well, when I tried to get people in those particular states, I was having difficulty doing it. Now, I was making this point to him, like, your issue is not the money, your issue is legitimacy. If you're talking to an African American, the first question they're going to ask you is, can you get elected? If that answer is no, it doesn't matter what you say. If you're asking me for $10 and I think you can't get elected, then no. It's like me saying, hey, can you throw $10 down a sewer hole? No, I'm not going to do that. If those people full well thought that you had the capacity to get elected, then giving you $10 would not be an issue. The problem is legitimacy. They have to actually know and understand that A, you can get elected. Now, for African Americans, this is a major hurdle for you, because if you're talking to us, and not me, I'm talking about the group as a whole, 89% of us voted for Hillary Clinton. That is fucking amazing and embarrassing. That is amazing and embarrassing. That number is ridiculous. I can't believe that number exists, but that goddamn it, that number exists. 89% is amazing. Now, that headwind. You have to hit that headwind. They didn't vote for Hillary Clinton because she had an awesome platform. Those people probably couldn't tell you what her platform is, because Hillary Clinton couldn't honestly tell you what her platform is. Those people did it because they wanted to keep the boogeyman out of office. Don't vote based upon your values. They vote out of fear. They vote out of fear. Whether it's Trump, whether it's anybody else, for the most part. Obama was like that first vote where they're like, yes, God damn it, yes, I'm making this vote. I'm proud to make this vote. For African Americans, that's the way they felt about it. Hillary Clinton came over like, well, keep Trump out. The other guy, well, keep Trump, but keep Bush out. That's the thought. So if you're a Green Party member, you can have a conversation with an African American. In their head, it's, you man out. There's a goblin at the door. I need to not open it. Is the Green Party member going to open that door by letting that goblin in the house? Now, and look, this is not easy, because ultimately this is hitting head on in this idea of legitimacy. If that African American believed that you could get elected, then that $10 is in your pocket. If they don't, it's not going to happen that way. There's another hurdle. Legitimacy is fickle in a human conception. Meaning legitimacy is what people think legitimacy is. There's no there to it. Like, I give an example. Yeah, there's a clip in, I think it's Game of Thrones. And he says something like, power resides where people think power resides. That's true. The very act of somebody of human conception looking at a particular thing and believing that, okay, there's something there. That particular person has some kind of influence and power in the world. Whether the person has influence and power in the world is irrelevant. Ultimately, those people just thinking that, just conceiving it, just believing it, give that person a certain amount of deference. And in doing so, somewhat gives him a certain amount of power because they believe he has a certain amount of power, meaning they conform to that particular source, whether or not that source is real or not. It's like playing chess. There's certain plays where we call it a boo oucher. It's like somebody makes a move, and like, holy shit, that's an amazing move. You realize that's not an amazing move. The individual, however, is responding to it as if it's an amazing move. Legitimacy is the same way. Legitimacy is what people think legitimacy is. So this is not the easiest hurdle. You get over this hurdle by winning something, but this is chicken and the egg. So I don't necessarily think it's easy. I'm just making this point that it's a hurdle that you guys need to hit. And if you're talking to African Americans, you're trying to get their vote and you're asking them for dues, that's the hurdle you're going to run headlong into. It has nothing to do with whether they can afford it. It has everything to do with whether or not they believe you as a Green Party member or you as a Green Party candidate can stop the other guy. I'm just saying that's the crux of the case that you're dealing with when you're talking to African Americans about voting. They vote out of fear, not vote out of hope. They may convince themselves that they like a particular candidate, and you may have some true believers, but ultimately it boils down to, God damn it, that Republican is horrible. We need to keep him out that office. There's a cultural memory associated with it. So that just goes back 50, 60 years. It's not easy. If you can prove that you can get your guy in office, you have a chance. That's all I'm saying. The second point on this is image. It's image. Green Party is affiliated with environmentalism. That's a problem. Now, it doesn't bother me, but we're talking about 350 million people in this country that you need to win over, or you need to win over a significant portion of those people. You come across as environmentalists. Now, here's the problem with that. Bob is working 2 jobs. Or whether Bob is working a job, Bob is working 40, 50 hours a week. And working 40 or 50 hours a week, Bob maybe has a kid, Bob maybe has a dog, Bob has entanglements that Bob has to deal with. And dealing with these things, Bob is focused on, I need to get my kid money. I need to get my kid to this particular school. I need to get my kid to this particular trip. I need to go to a trip at a certain point. I need to make sure that this particular project is right. I need to do this job or that job. Bob is focused squarely on survival. He's focused squarely on the things that are in his life. If you're having a conversation with Bob about environment, that's beyond his scope. He's focusing on these things. He's concerned about these things in front of him. Environmental party. It doesn't fly. And mind you, I know you're more than environmental party, but his conception of you is environmental party. He's not looking at you in the same way that I look at you, because I understand you have a fuller platform. He's looking at you as, these guys are hippies. Yes, you may be hippies, but you also have a lot of shit in the platform that would help Bob in his capacity. You got to get past that. You got to get over the hurdle of image. You got to get over the hurdle of image. Now, in California, Greens have been blowing up, apparently. They're I think, there were 166 Green candidates all across the United States. And it was a significant percentage of those that were in California. California's doing amazingly well. Even the gentleman on the panel that was at the Left Forum, I think it's called Richmond Progressive Association, something like that. They've been putting people on city council and all. These guys have been doing amazingly well. A progressive group joined up in order to fight an oil company and essentially coalesced around it and have been putting candidates in office. They've done amazingly well. You need to replicate that. That's all I'm saying. And yeah, you need to replicate that. That's all I'm saying. It just needs to be replicated. It's a problem. I'm not necessarily sure how you get over that particular problem. Now, dues would help, but there has to be a little bit more than dues. You will get people to donate money to you as you're running your particular campaigns, but that doesn't have anything to do with your offices and things like that. You have to structure yourself in a way. Not just structure yourself. You even need to affiliate yourself with other parties, be it socialists, communists, Marxists, all these other groups, all these other smaller groups. You need to pull those guys under your wing. These guys are all over the place. They're flittered out. You have 50 million people who left the Democratic Party. You have some people trying to draft Sanders. You have other people trying to start a progressive independence party. You have another people trying to start the Socialist Party. I myself would like to start some kind of organization. Well, your energies are scattered. Part of this comes as a destruction of the Democratic Party. It's like smashing atoms together. You've smashed this thing, in which case all of these things have flown out, and all of these things are saying, we need a solution. Well, this is where you're going. That's where you're getting with that. Greens, I just want you to be better on this. This country needs an alternative. We need something different. You have two parties. Those two parties are allowed to control or constrain the debate. Now, those two parties are paid to do that. They're paid to keep stuff off the table in regards to the conversation. Yeah, and being paid to keep stuff off the conversation, they don't want you in that conversation at all. By having two parties, you create this artificial edifice of two sides. Meaning this seems like the range of debate, when in reality, it's Pepsi versus Coke. That's what you're talking about. Now, once you're outside of that scope, you're like, these guys are fucking Pepsi versus Coke. Why are these guys arguing about this stuff? They're quibbling over these minor, tiny differences. Well, the public doesn't know that. The public sees two parties and they look at it and says, this is the range of debate. They're robots. They don't quite get it. You break that paradigm. You need to break that paradigm. You need more than just 3, 4, 5 parties. You need multiple parties. You need multiple opinions in this particular country. You need multiple things attacking or hitting at this particular process of getting these various opinions into the political process. Right now, what the public wants is not articulated into the law. Part of that is because you have two corrupt bought parties. You have a bunch of millionaires and billionaires who pay these guys to take particular tasks. They lean in the direction of the people who are paying them. If I know that there's a super PAC out there from an oil company, and I also know that if I say anything wrong, that super PAC is not going to give me the money from that particular oil company. They're not going to run the ads in my favor. They may even run ads against me at that point. What am I going to do? Am I going to take the money from the oil company, lean that particular way, and be their spokesman? Yes, that's what mostly they do. You can go down the line. The people who are paying them are ultimately the decisions that they make in regards to legislation, not what their constituents want. You need to have other parties that can contest that process. Otherwise, the process will remain the way that process is. The process is a problem. The process is a major problem, which means you and maybe some other groups, I need you guys to be better. And I need you guys to be full on in the political process to actually deal with shit like that. Yes, you're going to collect dues. You're going to collect dues. You don't have a choice. I don't know why we're having this conversation about dues. The question becomes, what are you going to do with the money after you get the dues? When I play chess, position the way it is. I'm acknowledging the position the way it is, but I'm looking at things and saying, what do I want to get to? Meaning, what are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? What are the things in the position that would allow me some kind of hook or some kind of advantage? What do I need to move towards? And what is the best way of moving towards that thing? I'm not looking at the position the way it is now. I'm acknowledging it, but I'm not necessarily looking at it as determinative. Yes, it's determinative. That's the wrong word for it. It's not my constraint. I'll put it that way. I'm looking at things ahead and I'm thinking to myself, what needs to be true for me to get to the position that I actually like, or for me to exploit this particular opportunity? I'm saying you need to be thinking about this in the same way. You shouldn't be having forums on how we're going to get money. The forum should be on, what are we going to do with that money? What are we going to do with it? What are you going to do? How are you going to contest the parties? How are you going to attack the parties? How are you going to put candidates in office? How are you going to get to the point where you could cripple the Democratic Party? Even if it's not a situation where you could win, at the very least, keep a situation where you can make them lose. You can make them lose. This is scorched earth. Is an asteroid about to hit the planet or not? You're a Green Party member. You guys are environmentalists at your fundamental basis and at your core. So you believe in the climate science on this front. If you believe in the climate science on this front, why are you guys dicking around? Why are we dicking around? Why are we having the conversation about, are we going to pay dues? What are you going to do with the money? That's all I care about. What are you going to do with the money? How? What's the plan? How do you contest these two parties? How do you get yourself in the process? What legal means can you use to attack two parties? Beyond legal means to attack the parties, how can you undermine that particular duopoly in state and local legislatures like you've done in California? How can you replicate that process in one state after the next? You guys should collect dues, period. And if you collect dues, the people who don't pay those dues, fine. At the very least, you have a core fundamental base of people who you know, who are in your party, and who mean to be in your party. They're believers. They're earnest. I would make the case that, I know this is purely just a state thing, but I would argue that the states that are collecting dues need to somewhat hobble together and dump that money into one particular state to take that state. Take that state. I know this is somewhat, and look, you can still do the environmental stuff. You just can't do the environmental stuff as your lead, and you can't give people the perception that you are an environmental party. That's all I'm saying. You can still get what you want. It's like, again, I hate to use keep chess reference. There are times where you're playing somebody and you're attacking the queen's flank, banging on it, hammering on the queen side. Now the king is on the other side of the board, 8 squares away, other side of the board. And if you're looking at that, you may say, what the hell is this guy doing attacking the queen side when the point of the game is to checkmate the king? Now, in this particular case, you're hammering on the queen side because you realize that once an opening and once you break the queen side, you have the capacity to flank your particular enemy by moving over to the king side with those forces that broke through. I'm saying, as a Green Party member, you full well can acknowledge that the environment is an issue. You full well understand that there's an asteroid hovering over this planet. Bob doesn't know that. Bob doesn't give a shit about that, but you know that. Now, if you do something to get Bob on your side, Bob is also going to care about the asteroid, but I guarantee you he cares about the asteroid less than what he cares about his own economic fortunes. You have other things on your platform that would help Bob. Help Bob deal with that. Bob will help you deal with the other thing. That's all I'm saying. You got to get rid of this image of Green Party just being an environmentalist party. And don't come out with advertisements saying, we're more than just environmentalists. Don't do that. Don't do that. Again, that's showing this thing of, this issue here with a certain level of sensitivity about it. But you definitely need to get that across, that we are more than just this. And you need to get it across sternly. I'd argue that if you can dump your money into a particular state and you can win that particular state, affirm to people that this is legitimate. You attack legitimacy by winning. You attack legitimacy by winning. And I understand you have all these different places throughout the state. I'm saying you need to take the governorship of a particular state. That's what I'm saying. The money that you get can be dumped into those processes. It doesn't necessarily have to be directly into a campaign, but it needs to be in a way where you're undermining and attacking those parties relentlessly, and not necessarily attacking them at the level to which the party want to play. Meaning the parties want to have this fight in regards to the parties themselves. Yes, we're not going to let you on a debate stage. This is our domain. Attack those fuckers in court. And the same way the DNC fraud lawsuit is attacking the Democratic Party in court, do the same. Find things to chip away at it. Find things to injure it, to hurt it, to expose it as a fraud. Find things to go at that particular party to ensure your place either on that debate stage or at the very least in regards to the way the voting process is set up. Hell, take those people to court saying we're supposed to have fair elections and that's in the Constitution and we can't prove that we have fair elections. Whatever you need to do, make a splash, make a stink about it. Do what you need to do after you do it, meaning dues. Meaning dues. Stop having this conversation about dues and do it. Just do it. Not just in Georgia, all across the country. Are you legitimate or not? That's the question. Are you serious or not? Bruce Dixon got pissed during my question. I asked him, why are we having this conversation about dues? And yes, you should have dues. The question is, what are you going to do with the money? And he sternly slams his hand on the table because you can tell, again, they're sensitive about this issue of legitimacy. And he's making this point of we shouldn't have to go with other people in order to get a meeting because we can't necessarily afford to have an event venue. He's right. He's right. Are you serious or not? Are you legitimate or not? And if you are legitimate, you need finances to run. How are you going to get those finances? How are you going to get those finances? You're not taking corporate donations. When your candidates run, yes, you're going to have certain people giving money to your candidates. Where's your state office going to be? Where's your local office going to be? If you're at an event, where's that event going to be? When the Democratic Party does something that's pretty shady and shitty and you need to take them to court over it, where are you going to get the funds to do that? I'm making the point that if you full well believe in the Greens, if you believe in them, if you believe that that's a potential vehicle for the left, meaning the Democratic Party is not the left party in this country, I agree. Fine. How are you going to contest that? How are you going to make a difference? How are you going to get across this thing that we are a legitimate party? Don't tell me about it. Show me. How are you going to do it? I'd argue that dues is the first step. I'd argue that some way of generating revenue that is at least consistent is the way to go. It's the way to go. You don't have a choice. I know leftists are iffy about money and all, but you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. Also, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I need to get dressed for the next forum. I'm going to show, I'm going to give more information on this particular thing. They have several panel discussions for today also. I'm also going to the People's Summit next week. That should be interesting. Sanders is going to be there. Nina Turner, I'm going to try to stick a camera in their face. Now, I'm saying that in a good way. I'm trying to find them. It's funny. I took a bus here. I was going to take a bus to the People's Summit or a train to the People's Summit because it was a damn fucking expensive airline ticket. And the bus or the train takes 28 hours to get to Chicago from Richmond. It's either the bus or the train, one of them. The train is not that much better. That's fucking amazing. If you're going anywhere else in the world, I could get on a high-speed rail from Britain to France in no time. Japan has these bullet trains that goes from point A to point B. Even in Europe, the trains themselves compete with the airlines because of how fast the trains go. I'm on this fucking Amtrak that takes forever. This country, we talk about this country being a shiny city on a hill in American exceptionalism. And you have these fucking trains that take forever, these old ass trains. When I was in Egypt, I took a train from, I think it was Cairo to Aswan. Old train, took forever to get there. And guess what? Those trains are, for the most part, similar to the ones we have in this country. It's amazing. It's amazing. We should be dumping money into infrastructure in this particular country instead of spending nearly $1 trillion murdering civilians abroad. Take $200 trillion from the military or $200 billion from the military and build a loop. Build a maglev. Go beyond this idea of just a bullet train. Build a maglev. Build a super loop that goes from California to Richmond in a few hours, as opposed to taking days on end. You have the technology, you have the manpower, you have the brain power. Just fucking do it. Anything else other than murdering people. Take $20 billion and fix the water systems in all these places. Take another $10–15 billion, fix the bridges. Take another $100 billion and give free college to everybody else. You're spending nearly $1 trillion murdering people. You're telling me you don't have the money to pay for those things. It's amazing. Look, part of this has to do with the way technology works in regards to capitalistic societies. If you yourself have infrastructure and something, let's say it's oil, gas, whatever, that automatically brings a certain amount of political clout. As you're digging into the political process, you are pushing those guys to do certain things that inhibit certain technologies. You yourself are even inhibiting certain technologies, so you don't necessarily want those things to come about. So no, you don't want the electric car coming about if you have oil and gas. As a politician, no, you don't want solar power. If you have an oil company, you have certain states that actually make people pay in order to use solar power. That's amazing. Way of decoupling the individual from dependence on these oil companies, not oil companies, these energy companies. Your company, you can be self-sufficient. That's a certain level of freedom. You completely decapitate that model that binds you to some private interests. Now, that's a good thing. However, that takes the money out of pocket of either oil, gas, or one of these other companies. So, hey, let's put in legislation to make these people have to pay in order to use solar power. That's a good idea. Let's inhibit that process. Let's inhibit the thing that would positively affect global warming or climate change. The capitalistic model isn't this thing of innovation. It's innovation from the standpoint of people who can make money off that innovation. But when you have technologies that aren't necessarily going to bring profit, but are to the betterment of society, those things aren't going to be done because nobody's going to make those things. Government is the only place that's going to put money into those particular things when they're that expensive. Now, government should be putting money in those things. You should want your country to have that infrastructure. You should build a country that's built around people, not necessarily capital. When I get on an airplane in the United States, the space of the people in that particular airplane, they build that plane to get the most number of people in that particular plane as possible to make the most amount of profit they can make. It has nothing to do with you as an individual. It's not built for the person. It's built for the plane to make cash. Now, other countries aren't necessarily like that. America is hyper-capitalistic, so America goes with that particular model because they want to make as much profit. They don't give a shit about the person. Capital is a profit. Capital is the highest virtue. How much money I have is the highest virtue, meaning how much money I can accrue in these situations. I'm maximizing my profit by stuffing people into this airplanes like sardines. That's capitalism. That's the model. That's the way the model functions. I'm saying that model inhibits other technologies that we need for these things. Yes, we can have a hyperloop. What's the hindrance? There is no hindrance. There is nothing stopping us from doing those things in regards to practicality. We have the manpower, we have the resources, we have the cash. We can do it. We just don't. When Chris Christie killed that bill that would have put a hypertrain, I think it was between New Jersey and New York, something like that, or Washington, D.C., New York, something to that effect. They had the money for it. The money was put aside for it. Chris Christie gutted that particular budget and used that money for some cronies or something else. We have a problem in this country in regards to the way the politicians function. I'd argue that other parties in the process would decouple or decapitate that process, meaning it kills that idea where you have two parties that can essentially have monopolistic control over the political apparatus. That needs to be destroyed. The Green Party or one of these other parties is a legitimate party. It at least has the capacity to do that and to bring this other argument into the picture of saying, oh, we don't have to stick with this. We're not stuck with this at all. We're not stuck with this at all. And just one last point. I was having a conversation with a Muslim gentleman about, I think I mentioned this, the African-American thing. Just to back this up a little bit, I watched a conversation between Al Sharpton bought Bernie Sanders, and I think it was Hillary Clinton, to have a conversation at one of his meetings. Hillary gets up, gives this flowery language. People fall asleep. Oh, that's great. That's great. Nobody cares. Bernie Sanders gets up. It's amazing. He's Sanders. Now, when you're talking to the crowd is saying, Yeah, I like what he was saying, but I'm uncomfortable with him making changes to the Affordable Care Act. Now, the Affordable Care Act is a bullshit right-wing plan. Those people are thinking to themselves, Obama did it. I don't want to touch it because Obama did it. Those people have a certain image of the Democratic Party that goes back 50 years. That is not easy to overcome. And even though what Sanders was saying was better than Hillary Clinton, more substantive, and directly affected each and every person in that room to a far, far, far greater degree than what Hillary Clinton was saying, it didn't matter. Room, again, made the appraisal. Well, she's a Democrat. I know who she is. I don't necessarily know who he is. Can he get elected? And can he stop the boogeyman from getting in that office? Dang. Didn't matter what he was saying. I wanted to mention that story because when I make this case that legitimacy is an issue, and if you're talking to African Americans, you're trying to get money from them and you're trying to get their vote, you're going to run into like a buzzsaw. You're going to hit it head on. Bernie Sanders hit it head on. And Bernie Sanders eventually started pulling the young African American vote, let's say 30s and everything else. Currently, he's one of the most popular politicians in the world, even among African Americans. I mean, in the United States. He clearly has a multicultural thing up. The report came out, it was a study showing that other races love the guy. Now, the Democrats put out this narrative, fucking Tom Perez, he's a white candidate. I've even heard other African-American hosts make the argument that Sanders wasn't sufficiently going for African-Americans or something like that. That study proves all that to be bogus. Clearly, what he was saying did attract those people. It's just the way African-Americans vote. Don't vote in the way of their hopes. They vote in their fears. Obama was a special case because he was black. It was the first time they were like, yes, he's one of us. He's one of us. He has a black face. Now, that black face was somewhat of an advertisement, and ultimately it was just there as a corporate spokesman of sorts. He wasn't there for your benefit. He gave 95% of the wealth to the top 1%. That is not for your goddamn benefit. I don't care how he looks. I care what he does. Those people, however, aren't in that boat. And you must forgive them to some degree for that. They have a cultural memory of those things that have gone back 50, 60 years. And the party that opened their arms to them was a party they went to. And that's the party that many of the older African Americans stick with. It's what they know. They do it almost for cultural reasons. I'm not there. I may be somewhat forgiving of it, but yes, it's kind of damn embarrassing that they're voting to that degree for Hillary Clinton, the person who put a lot of their family members in prison, those goddamn prison bills. Well, that prison bill, that's a tangent. I'm sorry, that's a tangent. Green Party, I want you to be better. That's all. That's the basis of the talk. I want you to be better. And in being better, it's acknowledging the problems that you have in regards to, because you have other problems in regards to the other stuff, but I'm saying problems that directly relate to how you operate and the things that you guys are doing tangibly. And I'm saying, I want you to be better. I want you to be better. I need you to be legitimate, meaning I need you to start taking seats in all these places on a higher level, meaning governorships. Even if that means getting dues only for the people who actually want to give them and dumping that money into places of, all right, we have limited resources. We can get more resources by getting more people to know that we exist and that we are a legitimate party. And we can do that by taking a state, even if it's a slow strategy of migrating from one to the next. At the very least, you get your hand in. I mean, you get this, you get some affirmation in that sense. And when you're having a conversation with people about trying to get people to vote for you, you don't have to tell them, oh, we have X number of people in the thing. How many times does Democrats have the conversation of, well, we have 100 so people in seat? They don't have that conversation. This particular conversation, again, is coming out of this insecurity about legitimacy. Yes, you have 166 people across the United States, but the very fact that you have to tell me that is a problem. Show it. Show it. Doesn't require telling. And if you're telling me it's problematic, that means you're trying to get people to buy into your argument. You don't want them to have to buy into your argument. You want to know it at a flesh to bone level. Get seats. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it needs to be done. Take a state. Focus on the state. Presidency is fine. Focus on the state. You can start migrating those places. I know you guys are doing gangbusters in California. You got to migrate, 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 migrate. All I'm saying is I want you to be doing more. I want to be able to put a vote for you guys. Think to myself, yes, this guy has a chance of winning this election. That's all. I'll give you guys a heads up on stuff that goes on today. I'm still uploading videos for the left forum for today, so I'll let you know how it goes. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the work through Patreon. Thank you.